What if events went differently? What if Peter Parker got the Infinity Gauntlet during the final battle of Avengers Endgame? What would have happened? What would have changed? Find out in today's fan fiction. Now, events in the original timeline would change very fast. Peter did in fact have the Infinity Gauntlet with him during the final battle in Avengers Endgame, but what had changed was when he gave the Infinity Gauntlet to Captain Marvel and she would fly into the van and it would blow up. The gauntlet would go on the ground and the Avengers would try to take it in time, but in our alternate branched reality, what if this didn't happen? Captain Marvel would ask Peter for the Infinity Gauntlet, and Peter would first hesitate, knowing could he trust all of these heroes on the battlefield? He didn't know who was his friends and who wasn't. He knew that he couldn't go through all of Thanos' army or even catch up with Tony. Peter would come up with a really good idea in his head, and he would give Captain Marvel the gauntlet. She would shoot off into the air just like the original timeline, but this time Peter would use his webs catching Captain Marvel's foot. She would be confused and Peter would propel himself in midair using all of the force to catch up with Tony. He would go flying into the battlefield and Captain Marvel, just like the original timeline, would fly into the van and they would all be sent flying back with a huge shockwave. Spider-Man would be sent to the ground falling down and he would be on the ground trying to crawl up, getting to his feet, but he would eventually end up catching up with the Avengers. He would open his eyes and he would look around and his vision was starting to blur out. He would see Cap and Thor fighting Thanos, and Thanos would take Thor's neck, choke slamming him to the ground. He would use his body and throw it into Captain America. Captain America would try to get up, but Thanos would take him, doing a backbreaker, finishing the job. Tony would see Peter on the ground crawling up from the blast, and he would rush to him in time. He would see if he was okay, and Tony would tell Peter he can't be here right now. This isn't time for no games. Iron Man would look to see Captain Marvel fighting over the gauntlet, and this would be the game changer. What would happen is Iron Man would rush in trying to save her, but Thanos would take the Power Stone and he would use it on Captain Marvel and she would fly right into Iron Man. Iron Man would be sent flying onto the ground. Peter would see this and he would look around and he could see that Doctor Strange was nodding his head in disappointment. Iron Man would try crawling up, but the Power Stone did so much damage to him and his suit that he was pretty much useless. Thanos would pick up the gauntlet and Peter would breathe heavily, knowing this was it. His final test to become an Avenger like Captain America and Iron Man was finally here. He would use his webs, kicking Thanos in the face, trying to distract him, and Thanos would grab Spider-Man, choke slamming him to the ground. Peter would put his hands on the gauntlet and Tony would say something to him. He would yell at Peter, telling him to drain his gauntlet, and the Iron Spider suit would take the stones out of the original gauntlet, and Peter would break out doing a backflip, and he would look around to see the gauntlet was on his hand. He would try landing the backflip, but he would fall on the ground on his knees. Tony would yell at Spider-Man, telling him to wait, but Peter knew what had to be done, and he could see different things within the gauntlet, like Mysterio fighting Iron Man, his Uncle Ben, and he knew what had to be done right then and there during that moment. Spider-Man would scream in pain, and he would snap his fingers. Peter would fall over onto the ground on his side, and Thanos' army would be completely wiped out, and they would be snapped away. Tony would run seeing Peter on the ground, and Doctor Strange would be shocked seeing that this wasn't how it was supposed to go down, and he would be confused seeing Peter. Because Peter had the powers of Spider-Man, he was able to stay alive. His arm would be almost melted off, and Iron Man would use his suit trying to fix his arm up by putting some of that weird nano healer on it. Tony in this alternate reality would still be alive, and he would go with Steve Rogers to fix up the timeline, putting all of the stones back in their place. Tony would still have a family, and Peter would still be alive. Steve would tell Tony that he had to have a life of his own, and that he would be staying in the 40s living his life in this alternate reality. Tony would come back seeing Steve as an old man, and they would talk for a bit. Falcon would still get the mantle of Captain America, and Tony would create a new suit looking more like the original red and gold suit from the 70s comic books, and he would visit Peter in the hospital. Aunt May would be with Peter, and she would see Tony Stark walk into the room, and she would slap him right in the face, and she would start crying. Tony knew that he had to do something. He would gift Peter in the hospital a suitcase, and the suitcase would have a brand brand new Spider-Man suit, looking more like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 costume, but also like the Far From Home suit. He would tell Peter it would help him out. Since Tony is still alive in our universe, Peter wouldn't feel like he had to be the next Iron Man, and he wouldn't really feel as sad as he did in the original Far From Home timeline because of Tony's death. Since Tony is alive, he really has high hopes for the future, and Mysterio would still be fighting fake villains like the original timeline, but this time Nick Fury and Tony Stark would discover Mysterio, leading into Spider-Man Far From Home. So what is your thoughts on what if Spider-Man snapped in Avengers Endgame? Now we're going to be doing what if Tony Stark was still alive in Spider-Man Far From Home, which will pretty much be the sequel to this what if. So anyways, as always guys, do make sure to comment down below what kind of fan fictions you would like to see, and if you guys did enjoy this little short fan fiction, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with latest content. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in and have an amazing day.